Ahoy, and welcome back to the Workaround. My name is Bob Gilbreth. You are in good company with over 11,000 fellow entrepreneurs and innovators who follow my stories from a career in tech startups and corporate innovation. I'm sitting here right now to make you think, smile, and discover a shortcut to success or a trap to avoid. Okay, I'm going to jump right into this one. This is called How I Pick Leaders to Invest In. Manage your mind so you can climb into theirs. I'm not sure if there's a tougher job than investing other people's money into public stocks. The expectation is that you'll beat the market. You know, the place where millions of brilliant, similarly motivated people and their finely tuned algorithms all compete to do the same thing. The job is to do this every year and do it without cheating. The best search for nuggets of uncommon understanding of how the world works. I've come to get to know a small community of such investors who play this game. It's called Coburn Ventures, and the members of this group gather periodically to trade tips. Their biggest secret is hiding in plain sight. They are really good at assessing the CEOs who run these public companies. One way they improve this skill is by speaking with non-investor types who also rely on assessing leaders for a living. People like executive recruiters, pro sports psychologists, and startup founders like me. Recently, I sat down to speak with two ringleaders of the group, Pip Coburn and Brynne Thompson. I shared some of the things I've learned about picking leaders for my companies. Please feel free to check out that conversation. I'll have links here. And you can either do that now in return or listen on for more of a thorough look at how I do it. Whether you're trying to beat the market, picking a new head of sales, or deciding to work for a new manager, these are some proven ways to better assess the potential of people to lead us through the storms ahead. Now, to start, I try to quickly assess a leader's character and capabilities. Capabilities represent whether or not they can actually do the job. Assuming you're looking at a seasoned leader, this is something you can find in their education, resume, and in pretty basic questions about the roles and situations they have found themselves in. Have they done the job you need them to do before? Are you sure they weren't previously promoted to the highest level of their incompetence, also known as the Peter Principle? Confirm this first and then move forward. Next, character. Character is the quality of a person. Do you like them and their values? Do they pass the no asshole test? This can be pretty easily gauged through a combination of face-to-face conversations and very probing back-channel reference checks. No excuses. Do those reference checks. If your prospective leader passes these tests, then the real work begins. And it's all about assessing whether or not they can lead a team through change. Many people can manage processes and people, and these are critical jobs to be done. But leaders exist to captain a ship in stormy waters. And in case you haven't noticed, business today is like hang 10 surfing in a tsunami. We need leaders who can see around corners and play 4D chess. They must not only see the future, they must create the future. And they've got to make sure a big team of worried employees isn't running around with their hair on fire. The leader we need, a true leader, not someone who's just had a title, is open to anything, lacks fear, and is comfortable enough in their own skin to admit they have no clue about how the world really works. In other words, they've got their ego in check. Forming an ego, which is an independent sense of self, is a key to growing up past puberty and into our first jobs. The ambition that often accompanies a strong ego frequently drives people to strive for leadership opportunities in the first place. However, a healthy, mature leader eventually realizes that the ego that got them there can tip from confidence into cockiness. Usually, it takes getting our asses kicked starting in our mid-30s for this lesson to finally hit home. We all run eventually into walls, and what happens next is where the strong and the weak start to split. Lesser leaders don't accept the lessons offered in failure, nor do they seek new information about making decisions. Both would threaten their precious sense of self. A vivid public market example is the recent fall of Nike's CEO, John Donahoe. He was hired after a career in management consulting and stints at eBay and ServiceNow, a software company. Through all that over 30 years of experience, he managed to avoid any experience in traditional consumer product brands like Nike. Yet, he came into that new job swinging. He over-relied on his well-worn tool of cost-cutting to the detriment of innovation, and he destroyed relationships with wholesalers that were critical to the business. He even attempted to blame the work-from-home policy for companies' losses. He also lacked experience communicating with his organization around tough topics. A friend of mine who works at Nike told me how Donahoe spent 50 minutes of an hour-long all-hands call saying how great everything was going, then finally dropping the news of a second round of layoffs. With his mic still hot, he added, "Funny, I've only had to do layoffs 3 times in my career." 2 of those happened to be in his first few years at Nike. Meanwhile, Donahoe continued to add zeros to his personal bank account. According to Wikipedia, when making these layoffs, he enjoyed a salary and bonuses that together put him in the top 0.1% of the top 1% of all CEOs in the United States. But with record losses and the stock price falling to new lows, the board finally just did it. Donahoe was fired for the first time in his career, and a 20-year company veteran was picked to replace him. Donahoe vividly shows us the kind of leader we want to avoid. They don't listen. They flex their power, blame others, and seek extrinsic goals such as pay and status. The commonality here is an externally focused view. Again, this is typical of someone who fails to look inside themselves because their ego is weak and their skin is thin. The leaders we need, and the ones you have to test for, don't rush into broad changes in areas they know little about. They spend time understanding the business and its people. They build a leadership team and trust them to own their pieces of the business. They are motivated more by intrinsic goals, such as learning, challenges, and team accomplishments. And they accept responsibility for everything that goes wrong, including acts of nature. When layoffs are required, they communicate with care and share the pain. This type of leader is internally focused. They know how to manage themselves before leading others. Unfortunately, depending on the personality test or ego development model used, it looks like about only 15% of human beings ever reach this plane of internal focus. So you've got to do work to find them. Keep listening. The first step is to pick the setting. It should go without saying that you must be physically present together for such an important task. But get out of the office too. Go spend a few hours together. Get some meals. Take long walks. Escape the distractions and the inhumanity of a typical office building to loosen up and get real. Next, ensure you've prepared with the right mindset going in. To begin, you want a completely positive regard for the other person. Let go of your own nerves, your own pre-existing biases and self-consciousness. No matter what happens, you're going to have a wonderful conversation, and the right decision will happen without a list of boxes to check and worries to work through. Your open, positive thinking about the other person will bring out their true self in return. By letting your guard down, they will do the same. Meanwhile, you must go into the meeting with a default no mentality. This is where I've made the most mistakes hiring senior leaders in my companies over time. I loved the character and capabilities of the candidate, but I was desperate to fill the job. So I went in with more of a default yes, and I overlooked issues that were hiding in plain sight. After that, I hired them and managed to hit my head against a wall for a year or more in trying to manage them. Default no, that expectation that no is going to be the answer, or the starting point. It's a wonderful balance with positive regard. It's an acknowledgement that only 15% of candidates pass the internal focus test. And it's another general habit of great leaders. They hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Once you finally sit down for the meal or turn left on the hiking path, you've got to lead with deep questions as soon as possible and as soon as socially comfortable. I like breaking the seal real quick with a question like, what made you who you are? That's not typically included in interview prep guides. Some other zingers I like are, what's a recent leadership decision you made? Why did you have to make that decision? What's the biggest career risk you took? What prompted you to take this risk? What took you so long to take this risk? How do your team's or company's values represent your personal values? Again, your personal values. When were these values recently tested in your job? When were your values recently tested in your personal life? A funny thing happens when you throw a deep curveball question into a discussion. You'll see the other person try to maintain their interview face. Their minds will race and their eyes will rapidly move around in their heads for a few seconds as they attempt to come up with a well-worn, socially acceptable answer. Then, finally, you'll see their face and shoulders relax. They may even sigh in a form of defeat. They'll break character, and the next words out of their mouth are complete honesty. These answers are the best test of whether they are the kind of leader who gets it. This conversation goes a lot better if you share similar deep answers in return. I will often lead with answering my own question or admitting my own screw-ups. Admitting your foibles first opens the other person up. And asking about managing people, for example, a favorite starting point of mine is, I've learned the most about leading teams through my screw-ups. What's something you learned about leading teams through a mistake that you made? The leaders I've selected over time, as well as my longtime friends, with considerable overlap between those two groups, refer to these as Bob questions. When they say that, it makes me want to ask such questions even more. A deep personal discussion like this not only unearths whether the candidate is one of the few you need, it also signals who you are and the relationship you want with them. You're the hiring manager or investor, so you get to be selfish. Chances are your values and personality are already ingrained in the company's DNA. If you like to go deep, you should only hire people willing to go there. And if they don't like it, then they will or should opt out of the process before it ends. If you don't like Bob questions, you won't like working with me. But, as you might have guessed by now, you have to be comfortable being yourself to make this all work. I honestly feel bad for John Donahoe and so many other leaders who very publicly hit the limits of their abilities so late in their careers. We all make mistakes, and many of us learn from them. I was fortunate to make my biggest mistakes earlier in my career in positions that were far from the limelight. You gotta drop to your knees before rising to the higher plane. Everything I have said so far here comes from extensive practice with my personal decisions, which have a significant impact on the success or failure of my projects, teams, and startups. Putting your butt on the line and living with the outcome of your decisions, then learning from the mistakes that you make, all compounds over time into wisdom. Wisdom increases the odds of success in a very chaotic world. And the biggest wisdom of all is seeing through your own bullshit. The more honestly you see yourself, the more accurately you'll see others. So, in that spirit, this model works for me, for now, and it might work for you. But you're going to have to go figure that out for yourself. Okay, hey, how we might work together. First of all, Fleet is our holding company for service businesses. This is where I'm lately making decisions about leaders to back, because we invest in leaders who are ready to start their own companies. We also do a little M&A. If this might be you, hit my office hours link, and I'd love to chat. One of our companies is A2 Influence. It's our content development agency that helps some of the biggest brands and retailers create and distribute authentic content at scale. Our CEO, Rob Reinfeld, would love to chat with you about how we can help your brands or businesses. Revelin is our consulting practice that helps with revenue alignment, growth management, and other RevOps functions. Our CEO there, Jess Schumann, is standing by to share a no-cost assessment of your business at any time. And then finally, feel free to hit my open office hours schedule link over on Substack. That's when we can share any feedback, networking, any other topic, anything you have in your mind. Seriously, any topic. It is my highlight of the week to have chats with both old and new friends alike. And then finally, the bonus cool content of the week, a little something I found meaningful. You might agree. This is another excuse to highlight the Coburn Ventures podcast, which I was interviewed on recently. I've got a link to that here you can check out. But really, you should go. This is a plug for their entire Coburn Ventures podcast. If you build or invest in businesses, you're going to love their discussions. I've had the pleasure of personally getting to know almost every guest that they've hosted, and they are truly fascinating people. You should also get to know them. Some of recent examples and episodes you can check out. I've got over on Substack. Executive coach and recruiter Lisa Baird. She shares inside tips of how to assess senior leaders from her perspective. Pip has a series called Stock Picking Disasters, in which he owns his own big mistakes early in his career and talks about how those mistakes ended up serving him well down the road. Morris Pickens is a sports psychologist who works with some of the top pro golfers on the planet. His tips for the golf game ladder up very nicely to whatever mental game you play. And two guys that I love anything that they talk about, Rudy or Irwin, you've got to see what they have to say. And if you enjoy their work, please try to add a friendly comment on the latest feature that Spotify has. You can actually now leave comments on their Spotify page. Check it out, say something positive, pay it forward, and tell them Bob sent you. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining. Ahoy for now.